Hi guys, you're about to listen to the first part of the new episode of the Localization Podcast number 21. This one is special because it's my very first interview that I did for the podcast. And as I mentioned previously in previous episodes, this is the format that I want to be doing going forward. So my first guest is a very seasoned Hungarian translator that goes by the name Vegh Fruzsina Judit, and this is the first part of their interview. So please enjoy this recording, and hopefully next time I'll also have some video footage of the interview. Here we go.
Hi everyone, this is finally the Localization Podcast episode 21, and as I announced and promised in the last episode, which was episode 20, I will not release a new episode until I have a guest. And finally, that dream has come true. So today I'm recording my very first interview with my longtime friend / freelancer, whose name I didn't even know how to pronounce until today. So Fruzsina, welcome to the podcast.
Hello.
maybe to brief our listeners, maybe you could try to recap how we actually know each other, if you remember it.
Sure. It's really interesting. Yes, I would call you my friend, even though we have never ever met in person. And I think
we didn't even speak until today, right?
Yeah. This is the first time we hear each other. So I started my freelance career almost 14 years ago, and I used to work for a company which still exists in its original birthplace in Czechia. It's Screwannek. Maybe I'm not pronouncing it correctly, but never mind. And I was working for the Hungarian office. I was.
Oh, you were?
Yeah.
Wait, really? I didn't know that. What?
I used to be a project manager for.
Okay. Okay.
And it was a long time ago. We didn't get on well with the manager of the place, and it was very hard. So I decided to quit and start a career on my own as a freelancer. That was my dream, and it turned out to be a good idea. Actually, 14 years is a proof, isn't it? So, and after I left Screwannek as a project manager, they started to use me as a freelancer, in their pool, and that's why, because if you remember, Screwannek was had a shared pool, I think, and that's why you started to work with me from Brno, right? I remember correctly that you were in Brno, not in Prague.
Yes. You mean like a shared pool of the freelancers, right?
Yeah, maybe.
That's what you mean? Yeah.
And you offered me lots of jobs for a certain for a certain company and client, and we got on very well, as personally. You introduced me to the world of Dexter. Do you remember that?
Really?
Yeah.
Wait, with Dexter, you mean the TV series?
Yeah. I was very good.
You mean the killer? The killer, right?
Yeah.
Really? I don't even remember. I didn't know it was that long time ago, because it's been it feels like it's been ages since I was working for Screwannek.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I really didn't know that you worked as a project manager. Probably I forgot about it. So was it your first job ever in the translation industry, that you started working for the Hungarian office of Screwannek as a project manager?
Yes, that was my very first contact with this.
So what is your background? Do you have some linguistic education, or how did you end up working as a project manager for Screwannek?
Yeah. Originally I have a teacher's degree and a linguistic degree as well. I also started my PhD studies in linguistics, but I never finished them. I think it's a shame. It's a pity. So I was absolutely interested in linguistics, and I still am.
Mm-hmm.
And the connection between Screwannek and me was a colleague of mine, and she was the head of office, I think, and we used to teach a Czech guy together to Hungarian because he wanted to study Hungarian every day of the week, and it was too much for one person. So we shared it. We worked for the same language school, and that's how we met. And and when there was a vacancy in their office, she said that okay, let's call her. I think she'll be fine, and that's how I ended up there. It was it was by chance, I think.
Yeah,
Pure
yeah,
luck.
yeah. Yeah, the same thing happened for me. Like I ended up in the whole industry just by accident, because I think I was in the second year of my university studies in Brno, Czech Republic, and I wasn't like even studying anything closely related to localization. I didn't even know that like something like studying localization or translation even existed. I was studying computer science, and then I was just like looking around for like my first job ever, so I was just like going to several different interviews, and then somehow I ended up in the basement of Moravia, which you probably know, and they had like their peak period, so there were two guys in the interview, and they hired us almost immediately. I don't think they even evaluated the tests that we did. So
Mm-hmm.
and 15 years later I'm here doing the localization podcast. So like things like this happen definitely. So but from what I understand, like what you're saying, that actually your first job ever was teaching the guy Hungarian, right? That was before Screwannek.
Yes, we can say that. And of course, it wasn't my first job because I even started at the university. I used to work as a receptionist. It was a very popular job at the end of the 90s, at the beginning of the 2000s, and I could use my language skills. But I never worked as a teacher. I mean, as a high school teacher, only as a private teacher. I didn't like it at all. It wasn't my path to follow. And excuse me. And that's why I was so happy to have a proper job in an office. And it was very useful. It was absolutely useful because I could see this industry from a very useful perspective. Clients don't know too much, I think. Vendors don't necessarily don't know too much either, but project managers have contact to both worlds, to the vendors and to the clients as well, I think. And it's a very tough job. Uh, I think organizing, contacting people, solving problems, managing deadlines, it's like jiggling all the time, non-stop jiggling, throwing things in the air and keeping them in the air, like in a circus.
Yeah, like juggling many different things, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was it was very tiring, and I decided to quit, and that's why I started working as a freelancer.
Yeah, yeah. I still wanna still I'm still interested like in your first like project managing experience. Did you join Scrivanek as a project manager right away, or did you start like as like maybe some junior position, which is usually called just like a project coordinator these days?
Uh, I think I started as a proper project manager, but I never had any special titles gained, like senior or assistant or nothing. I was just a simple project manager right from the beginning until the end.
Yeah, sometimes simple is the best. But maybe like for the people who are listening and they're not familiar with Screwannek, I'll try to maybe just share what I think is the difference between Screwannek and the more traditional LSPs. Because like Screwannek, to me, is, and maybe that's your experience as a project manager there as well, is that their localization department in Screwannek, in the whole group, is like very small. And by localization, I means like you have like international clients, they send you stuff like, I don't know, documentation software for localization. But what I thought and understood is that the core of their business is actually people from the street coming to the office and having, I don't know, like a hard copy of, I don't know, like some certifications that they want to translate. So that's kind of like the, I don't know, like the traditional translation business, I would say, not like the new IT fancy localization stuff. So is that your experience as a project manager in the Hungarian office, that you would deal with people who come like from the street with something to translate, or did you also deal with like international clients that had something more IT and, you know, digital documents for translation?
Only the latter. Yeah, only the latter. Because in Hungary we have a huge agency and governed by the state itself. And this is the agency which can only provide sworn translations, for instance, and that's why people go there. Of course, they are on the market, but I cannot call them market players because they have very different views about deadlines and rates and language pairs and quality and anything else. I never worked for them. I think it's kind of a. I would feel like royalty to work if I could work for them, but I never tried. I never attempted. Thing interesting. I don't know why. And for us at Screwannek, we had our domestic clients, which were also quite big clients, and the international ones as well. And from the very first day of my job, and as a part of my role, was to use CAT tools, computer assisted translation tools. If you remember that time, there weren't too many of them, and they were very, very, very simple. They were absolutely simple compared to today's tools, and some of them existed in a in a initial form or in a very basic form, version 1.0 or 2.0 form. And now some of them don't even exist anymore. I'm not sure about it because I don't have to use them now. And some of them gained high popularity, and they are widely used, popular, very expensive, and of course they are very smart compared to those early days.
Yes. I think I still remember that like Trados was definitely the number one CAT tool, and today they still kind of like maintain that market dominance, right? SDL, Trados, with all their different tools that they offer.
Yes.
But I still remember, like, I think that like when you wanted to translate like a Word document, I think I still remember that there was kind of like a plugin into Microsoft Word, and you were translating it directly in the Microsoft Word Do you remember those days? Like it didn't even run through the editor.
And it was absolutely unreliable.
yes. Like it was inserting all those crazy tags. And then like, for example, because like I'm working, like I never work as a translator,
Mm-hmm.
so like you have like a very different perspective of everything that's going on. And like I know, like for example, maybe I remember, maybe just like a bare memory, like like usually like when certain translators, they would mess up the tags. And so then when we as the engineers got the bilingual file, then the next step is for you to kind of like clean it up, which means that you just generate only the target version, the translated file. But sometimes like when the tags were broken, like it would not work. So we need to like investigate like where the tags were broken, fix them manually. So this was really really a huge pain.
Yeah.
But I wanted to talk a little bit still. Let's still stick to your project manager experience. So how do you remember like getting a training? Like was there a proper training for becoming a project manager at that time, or was it more like a self-taught experience for you?
Some of my colleagues were very helpful, but honestly, I never received a proper training. I think it was like this girl, this woman I mentioned, you know, uh, with 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 whom we shared a pupil, a student. I think she showed me something, but she had very quick movements. She knew everything, and I was sitting next to her, and I tried to remember everything, which is impossible, of course. And I tried to follow her movements with the mouse, and it was impossible. It was impossible. But time after time, we trained. We trained ourselves and we shared this info with each other. So it was kind of a self-generated training or a self-organized training. One person was using one tool and sharing
Mm-hmm.
this info, her experience with the others. And I think it was very useful. I learned quite a lot, honestly. I think I'm better trained even now after 14 years than most of the project managers I'm working with. No offense, of course, no offense, but
Okay.
I have this experience that I'm not sure that they know the tools well. They understand the whole process, which is sad. Maybe they are just newbies. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Well, we'll get to that later. So then you mentioned that you left because of your manager,
Yeah.
right? Can you maybe like share some more details, like what wasn't working for you? And was that the only reason for you leaving, like the relationship, or was it also related to the work? Or did you at that time already have like this kind of like feeling that you want to be rather translating versus managing the translations?
I never had an ambition to become a translator. I I admired them. I even worshipped some of them because I thought they were gods in misty mountains up there in the peak, and we respected them highly. Absolutely, that's also an interesting difference compared to now. That we understood that they were clever people, they were very smart people, skillful people, and of course creative people, and they had their stuff. You know, they were all weirdos, and and I know that it's true because I'm a weirdo myself after 14 years.
Okay, you will need to explain this at some point, why you think that all the translators are weirdos.
I think they are. Yes, we are weirdos. We
Okay.
are weirdos.
Yeah, I think I have the title for how to promote this episode. All translators are weirdos. Quote by Rushi. That will definitely pick up some attention. Yeah, okay, keep going.
No, I just wanted to leave, quite simply, because I could see that there was no chance for any promotion. I could see that the money was, salary was quite low, and we had a quite big tension. I didn't like it. I don't like to be frustrated. I had nightmares before going to work every single day. So I decided that I will put myself first, and I it will end. I will end up. Uh, I will cut off the ties, and and I think I made the right decision because it was my health at risk at the time.
Yes, yes, yes. I know what you're talking about. Yeah. Okay, but didn't you have like a didn't you struggle like with the fear of like, okay, like if I go independent, like I will not have like the monthly secured paycheck and the money may not come in? Or did you already somehow secured some work before you even quit Screwannek?
No, no, I wasn't interested in it.
So it was just like a leap of faith, like, okay, like if like you said to yourself, like, okay, I've had enough. I just want to be fit, and like my health is more important to me than the paycheck, and I'll just somehow try to figure it out as a freelancer.
Yes, exactly. I had no background. I mean, I had no job offered. Later, I had interviews, and I simply ran away. One of I had a job offered at a different company, the same job, and I mean, as a project manager, and I decided to run away. It made me so uncomfortable, and it was horrible. I imagined myself working there, and it was the most horrific picture. So I said no, and I didn't even know what to do, but I decided to, you know, stand up, keep up, wake up, and go forward. That was my decision, and my colleagues were very nice who stayed at the office because they sent me some review jobs, proofreading jobs, and I quite good at it, and I enjoyed it, and I didn't know that time. Now I do that proofreading was not a very popular uh, job, and I was the one accepting all of them, and I think it was a very good lesson as well, starting as a proofreader in the industry, and it was you actually who made me become a translator because you didn't know that I never worked as a translator, and you sent me a translator job after
Oh,
several, yeah,
really?
yeah.
Now you're saying. No, but okay. Before we get into like your whole career as a translator,
Hmm.
I still want to stick to like the first moment, like after you quit, because like only recently, like I got like a comment from someone that I don't know. They just somehow found the podcast, and this was someone who just like recently finished like their linguistic studies. So I think that there are actually many people listening to the podcast who are probably in the position where you were when you quit your job. Like you quit your job, you have to pay your bills and you have nothing. So like what was going on through your mind, and how long did it take till you got your first job? And like were you thinking about like finances? Like did you have like some savings? Or I want to focus on that period, like until you kind of like turn it into like okay, like until like you saw like the light at the end of the tunnel. Like you said to yourself, like, okay, like I can actually survive being a freelancer.
There was no tunnel. The moment I quit the company, I was out of the tunnel, and I don't know if you understand what I mean.
Yeah, because like I think like you felt free, yes. I know, because like I also had the same experience, like when I quit from some previous companies, because it was really like I couldn't take it, like it was making me frustrated dealing with some people, blah blah blah. But then, like when you end up like with no income,
Mhm.
I think that for many people, this is like where the fear starts to kick in. Like first you have like that euphoric moment when you're like, okay, fuck you, I'm fine, I'm done with you, like I don't have to deal with you anymore, I'm super happy. But then, like there's no money coming in, so how are you going to survive? Is that something that was going on through your mind, or did you just experience the positive part where you just left the company, you were still high on being free, and then you started getting jobs, so you never actually had to like consider like, okay, like where am I going to actually get the money to survive?
I think I was the second type. I was very, very happy. I was very happy to be free at last. I had to realize during my work there that I'm not a team player at all. And this is not something you are happy to put into your CV,
Oh, definitely, yes.
because everyone wants team players. I'm not sure why,
Correct.
because most of the jobs are just individual jobs, no team jobs, I think. And and I realized that I wasn't a team player, and yeah, it was quite a sad but important moment in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided, um, being in a company meant a burden to me, but maybe
Mm-hmm.
me as a person and as a more or less introvert person was a burden to a company too. And I didn't want to be a burden to anybody. Uh, and I didn't want to feel imprisoned in an office anymore. That was one part uh, I had in my mind during that time, and I was quite sure that I could find a job very quickly because I knew that I was a good uh, project manager, not the best one, but a skillful one. And when I realized after some interviews that I simply don't want to do this, uh, I realized that I could be a freelancer, nothing else but a freelancer. So my colleagues, my ex-colleagues, were extremely helpful, and they sent me jobs almost right away. And it was kind of a
Like a blessing.
no, not a blessing. It was a feedback that I could work on my own. Yeah, that
Oh
was
yeah, it
the
was like a sign, right?
yeah
Maybe.
fine yeah.
Yeah, I was just wondering, like how long did you had to wait for your first job to arrive, if you remember?
From my colleagues, or a few days maybe, because they realized that they could use me as a proofreader, and you are always short on proofreaders, uh, as I remember and as I can see. Uh, but that was the time when the company ended in about a year after I quit, and all the people went to different companies. All of my colleagues, and that's why I had. So that was my first clientele. The group of my clients that everyone went to a different agency, and they offered me jobs. So that's how I started to build myself as a freelancer, my platform, and it was good because I had quite a various, you know, mm, differentiated portfolio from different clients, and I could earn lots of experience. And had a new client coming, a new agency. I don't know where from. honestly. Oh, okay, I remember, but it's very complicated. But he wasn't an ex-colleague of mine, and he became very quickly my major client.
So how did he find you?
Uh, it was very interesting because it also happened through Screwannek. But there was a project manager there, a girl uh, with whom we were very close with, and she had a vendor, a Hungarian proofreader boy, and I'm not sure if he was a project manager or he just tried to be a project manager for this company, and and later he quit and came back home. He lived in Barcelona, I think, that time, and he came home to Hungary, and he contacted me, and his friend and his colleague had this certain company, and with him I had absolutely no ties. I never heard of him, and he contacted me. I created a very good test translation, and and he decided to work with me, and we're still working together. Interesting.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah, more than 10 years with a client. I think it's really something.
Yeah, yeah. So you mentioned that I might have been like one of the first people who turned you into a translator. Is that really the case, or did you try to do like your own initiative to become more of a translator? And also, sorry, I'm usually I just spit out all the questions at you, and you have to remember them. When did you actually discover or find out that being a translator might be better? And by better, I mean maybe more lucrative.
Mm, it was actually you. I mean, no exaggerating, no storytelling. It was you. It was you who turned me into a translator, literally.
Yay.
Because I don't know if you remember it, but you sent me proofreading jobs only until
I
that
don't
day.
remember that. I don't remember that because like I'm actually surprised because like well we can share it like because like it's been such a long time. Like the client that we were mainly working on was HP,
Mhm.
and HP was not only sending us HP stuff, but HP was also a vendor for Microsoft. So it was a combination of HP materials and also Microsoft materials. So typically IT, but I don't remember like if there was someone else who would do translation before you. So that's why I'm like this kind of like doesn't match my memory that you would just be doing proofreading, because then I don't know who would be doing the translations before that.
I cannot tell you. I, was, I wasn't sitting next to you.
Is it maybe possible? Is it maybe possible that we were sending it first to the Hungarian office of Screwannek, and then you would do the proofreading? I don't know.
Maybe. Chances are.
Because at that time there was no machine translation, right?
And there was absolutely no machine. No, 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 no. Of course not. No, absolutely not.
From my Screwannek time, I remember that I was lucky, especially for Hungarian, because I had you, and I also had this other agency which was called Tech. I'm not sure if you know about them,
No.
if you know any of the guys. I remember István and Laszlo. So I was very happy because like my Hungarian was like the best language ever. Because both of them were like reliable, and there was nothing to like check after you guys. So that's why I'm still confused, like who would be doing the translations before you.
I'm not sure. I cannot.
So was it just like we were sending you like translation for proofreading, and then suddenly I said, oh, the translator is not available. Can you maybe give it a try and do a translation? Do you actually remember that first
Yeah, I
project?
think, but you didn't tell me that the translator is not available, so please do the translation. And I said, I was like shocked. I was absolutely shocked. I never performed a major translation before that, and oh God, I had some, let's say, flirts and some flings with translation, but I without exaggerating, I have to tell you that I had a great respect to translators, and I was quite sure that I could never reach that level of skill uh, or abilities, language knowledge, anything, uh, background, cultural, linguistic, anything, to make to make me uh, eligible to become a translator. That's what I thought. And one day you came and you said, please do this, and I was just sweating. And I was in a state of shock. I had a very huge heart rate, and I said, I remember that I couldn't even reply to you immediately because I I wanted to tell you that I never performed the translation before, but it was such a huge opportunity, and I didn't want to let you down. I didn't want to let myself down, so I decided to confirm the job, and that's how it all started. I think with that one HP job. Yes. So it's your fault. It's your fault, Andre.
I didn't know I was so powerful, but okay, I'll take it. But that's actually funny because I think that like, and maybe I can share this story because it's like nothing, no secret. I think that like even Global Me, the company that I'm working for right now, that's how they started. Because they were also working for some client, which I cannot name. And then at some point, the client had like an extra request, like, "Hey, can you maybe also do this?" So instead of saying like, "No, no, I have never done that ever before," they just said yes, and they just like learned it on the go. So I think that's how actually like people discover like new things that they could be doing, and maybe the new things will fit them better than what they're already used to doing. So what I'm wondering is like, how was like, you said that like you were like afraid, you were nervous, but how does like a proofreader transition into translator?
I think it's a better way. I mean, there are two ways to become a translator and a proofreader. You start as a proofreader and you become also a translator on the go, or you know, um, you start as a translator and later you accept some jobs proof. It's more difficult and it's not the best way. I think it's better to start as a proofreader because as a translator you have a different concept in mind, and as a proofreader you have to be a runner, or just like a marathon runner and and a sprinter at the same time. Uh, and as a translator, you don't need that double skill. You just have to have a concept about the job. What kind of, the tone of voice you will use, uh, the, I don't know, pick of words apart from terminology. If you want to be friendly, if you want to be professional, um, these are the decision. Sorry, these are the decisions you have to make as a translator, and as a proofreader, you have to uh, understand this vision, this concept, if there's any, most of the time, I have to say there is no concept behind the works. And you have to be able to pick, typical errors, not just like spell check or anything else, but also inconsistencies, and you have to check every sentence on its own, and you have to check the paragraph, and you have to check the whole text. And that's why I say you have to be a sprinter and a marathon runner at the same time, because you have to be able for both. And it's really difficult. If you start as a translator, I'm not sure that you are actually capable of this. If you know what I mean. I mean, if you can understand what I mean.
I think I do, but at the same time, I don't know like what they're teaching the people who go through these studies. I would expect that they teach them like what you just said. Like the concepts and like the style and the tone of voice. So maybe they're not totally unprepared. But would you, in general, say that like being a proofreader is an easier way to get into the translation industry as a freelancer?
I think so. But it's really interesting, the position of proofreading or review, depending on how it's called now, or quality assessment. There are so many names, because to me it seems like that it's really important. It's a really important step in the process. But at the same time, I have the feeling that they do it because it's mandatory, and companies would skip it if it was possible.
Yeah. I think I know what you're talking about, because like I see like many of the companies, and I think I was like basically shitting on this before. Like if I see like a company and if I go on their website and like the first thing that I see is ISO certified, then I'm like, okay, like boring, because like they only do certain things just to comply with like a certain certifications. Like, okay, like you need to have a translation, then you need to have like a QA step or proofreading, and they just do it because like it's kind of like mandatory because of the ISO certification. But like in reality, like like there are like many different factors that come into play, and usually like when I see like ISO as like the main benefit of a certain company, to me it means that they cannot use their brains to come up with something extra to add the value for the client, so yeah. Okay. How is it working for your own? Like did you start working from home, or did you already at that time be like the new millennials that that you would go like to Starbucks coffee? How was it? You mentioned that like you like your freedom on its own, but at the same time, like I think that everybody who's working from home needs to kind of like have a certain level of discipline to actually do stuff and not do other things around the house.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you start? How was like your first experience, working from home, not going to the office, and maybe try to compare it with like what you're doing right now? Like how has your freelancer life evolved over the years?
I didn't have a discipline. I was more like spontaneous and lazy. And
Okay.
during the first year, for sure, it's long gone. It's long gone, but I was just a very stupid little freelancer at that time. Yes, I'm happy to say that. And I realized over the time that uh, keeping deadlines is important. And later, right now, I feel that they are always negotiable. But there was a time in my life when I was quite accurate. I was quite accurate at deliveries.
Mhm.
Uh, Now I'm not not that much. Maybe.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't think that I would be interviewing you if you were not keeping to your deadlines, because I don't like people who don't stick to their deadlines, especially if they agree with it. That's like the worst kind of the freelancers, and not only freelancers, like anyone that I'm working with is like, when you ask them like, okay, can you please deliver something by, I don't know, let's say tomorrow, and they say yes, and then they, even if they like know that they'll be late, they don't even
Mhm.
like tell you that, hey, I'm sorry, like I'll be late, can you extend it? They just don't do anything. That's like the worst kind of delays that really piss me off, because like people are like not accountable for their own deadlines that they agree to. So I'm glad that I work with you during your consistent times when you were delivering on time, because otherwise I would have a different memory of you. Okay, please continue.
No, I learned my lesson. You have to be capable of capable of developing and growing, uh, because I know it's really annoying when somebody's waiting for your work and you are late. Maybe you are late with a reason. Most of the time, I'm late with a reason, and this reason is usually out of my own control, and it's really I it's it pisses me off all the time. But it happens almost every day. Part of the freelancer life, I think. Uh,
Can you maybe share like some examples of what you mean, like what is out of your control?
for example, you go home because you know that you have like 3 hours to finish a job which takes 90 minutes to finish, and suddenly the transport dies, and you have to walk home, and it takes much more time. Or suddenly you have health issues, or your loved one has health issues, and it actually happened um, um, when my mom was very very ill, and I had a very very tight deadline for something, and I called the PM, and I was crying and I told him that it was impossible for me to finish the job, and and he was very very understanding, because it doesn't happen too often. I think I made this kind of call like 2 times in my life, and I never lied. So this is out of my control. I never. I'm not a you know I'm not a bad person. I don't want to cause troubles to project managers. I remember how stressful this work was, and I like them, even if I don't have personal relationship with most of them. And I just want to be reliable and kind, and deliver good quality. And sometimes it happens. Life happens.
Yeah, life happens. Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking as well. Um, do you have like any like a routine? Like when you start your work, like do you try to like, are you like a morning person or an evening person? Um, can you maybe like, I just want to get like an practical way of like how you go through your day as a freelancer.
I don't have a typical day.
Okay,
I don't.
life happens to you every day, right?
Yeah, a, I have a plan, or I have rather have a hope for every day, and
That's
it
so
never
bad.
turns out that way. But it's
Okay.
more like a hope, you know. Every day ends with a little prayer, like, please, please don't ruin my next day, like you did it today, or yesterday, or the day before. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Um, I I know right now. I know what I'm capable of uh, client-wise, work-wise, workload-wise. So I know how to fit everything into my schedule, and my schedule is not as tight as it used to be, because at the beginning, my goal was to have as many clients as possible, as many jobs as possible, and I never said no to anything. That was my approach, and it's really difficult to get rid of it when you are already with the flow, and you already have your well established relationship with clients, and you can go for a longer holiday without risking a relationship or a client and losing it. And now I have very well established relationships, really, and I can afford myself to negotiate the deadline or the budget. But it took a lot of time, and not just time, but to learn my own value, and to gain and build confidence. I think that's the most difficult thing when you start as a newbie in any industry, that you have to learn your own value, and you have to build confidence basically out of nowhere. And I'm very proud of myself that I was capable of doing this. Really, it wasn't in my DNA. It was work.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Like everybody needs to like judge their own value. But like for the new people listening, you mentioned like, you know, like you're confident like about your relationships with the clients. Like how would you advise for the new people, like how they can kind of like measure or know when their relationships are strong? Like what are the signs that you're looking for when you're going to say that, okay, with this client I now have like a better relationship? Is it purely based on the email communication? Do you also try to, if possible, meet with some of your clients in person, because you think that like a personal connection adds like a lot of like strengthens the relationship a lot more? What's your opinion on this? How do you know that a relationship with a client is strong?
Um, they It's a very interesting thing. They tell you things they are not supposed to tell you. Uh,
I'm just thinking about the stuff that I told you when we were doing, when we were working together. Okay.
Indeed, and I knew.
It's 12 a.m. So yeah.
Okay, no, I really mean it. That they tell you some background information, or they share some of, especially the project managers, because I don't have direct end clients right now, and I prefer it that way. I used to have end clients, and it was really difficult. So I prefer working for agencies, and I prefer working with the project managers. I never had a personal. I think I never met anyone in person in my life. Not even you. Haha. And no, I like being friendly. I'm open, sometimes chatty, sometimes because I'm getting older, and I'm not as I'm not as that young girl I used to be, for 13, 14 years ago. That was a different time and different me. But I like to have a smooth relationship, and I want to show my clients that I'm a real professional, that I understand their problems, I understand what the end client wants, And I still, if I'm against something, or I advise, I have a different opinion or a different advice or a different approach, I always tell them very clearly, and and I always have proof. I think it's very valuable. Uh, I gained respect with this approach. Maybe I'm not even capable of anything else. I'm not sure. but if you show how professional you are, sorry, uh, I think it's worth it. It's always worth it at the end of the day, because the project managers love vendors who know what they are talking about and why they do what they do. They who can understand the whole process, who can understand the project manager's position in the whole process. Of course, I understand. I used to be one of them. So I think it's just you have to take as many pieces of the puzzle in the industry as possible, because that's how you understand the end client. That's how you understand the project manager, the agency, the different vendors. Um, I think that's the point, that you have to learn, not just the tools. You don't not just going through the trainings, but you have to gain information about anything that's possible from anyone who is ready to tell you something. It's not gossip. It's purely about the job, that you understand where you are and where you go and where the industry is coming to, and you have a roadmap.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like that's like the added value that kind of like I think separates the good from the best. And I think like maybe I even mentioned this on one of the earlier episodes, and I think it also applies. Oh, it applies to everyone in the world, whatever you're doing. But I think I was also mentioning it for the case of project managers. You know, like you can mainly just focus like on like okay like what the customer wants from me and then just pass that information to the freelancers and get the project done, but that's just like the basics, you know. But then if you are more interested in like finding out like what the product or the service that you're localizing is actually about, who are the end consumers or the end clients of the product, and if you see like these things like in the bigger picture, it definitely increases the value of you as a project manager, because like anybody can like forward handoffs from their clients to the rest of the team, and you can get the project done that way. But I think it's like a very boring way to look at project management. Um, so you mentioned that end clients are difficult. Can you elaborate more on why that is so? Why you prefer working with LSPs?
Uh, and clients don't don't know anything about the industry. They just want to get the job done, and I think it's quite understandable. Uh, in my opinion, they don't even have to know, because they pay and they have a request and they have a deadline, and these three factors are more or less enough uh, to work for them. But they don't understand if you have issues. They don't tend to reply if you have questions, because they don't understand your questions or why you want to know something. And maybe they say it's confidential information, and perhaps it is. But without this information, you won't be able to deliver a quality job, because you miss something. Um, and of course, sometimes they are very pushy, or sometimes they are absolutely ignorant. Depends. And sometimes they are both. I mean that during different phases of the job, if you have 10 days, for instance, uh, and during the first 3 days, they're absolutely ignorant. It happened to me, and as the deadline approaches, they are getting more and more pushy, and I think it's not good because you have to concentrate on the work, and it's really tiring to be open and ready to answer questions from the clients and explain things to them. This is what the agency does, the language service provider does, and I don't have to deal with it if I'm working for the LSP instead of the client, the end client. So I think that's why it's difficult. It takes more communication, more effort, and you won't get more information from the client. It's not necessary. So I cannot see the benefit to work for end clients as you know, as a simple vendor. Um, I have no company behind me. I have just this small business company. It's just, I'm just an entrepreneur, nothing else. And that's why it's more comfortable to push this responsibility on the LSPs and enjoying myself as a vendor.
Yeah, I think it makes things simpler for you as a freelancer. But on the other hand, I also think like working directly with end clients, of course, it depends on like if they actually have like a localization department or someone like in that company who actually thinks about localization in a different way than just asking a couple of freelancers to do some translations. And I think like what is the upside is that like if you don't have the middleman, which to you looks like a benefit, I think like working directly with end clients gives you like more opportunities to improve things, assuming that they're like listening and they want to improve their localization. And also it kind of like cuts off the middleman. And I know that like one of the main things that I was struggling with in my previous companies, especially it was a feedback from freelancers, was that dealing with translator queries, when you send it to the LSP, then you need to wait for them to pass it on to the client, because many of the queries, the project manager or anyone working on the LSP side, they cannot answer it. They have to actually ask the client. So this adds like extra time. So I think it was in Autodesk that we were actually considering just opening like a direct channel between the translators and the developers. For example, like when you're translating like a software and there's like a string which has like an ambiguous meaning, it's much easier if you can just ask directly the developer who put the string there and they know the meaning, rather than waiting for some project manager to pass it on to their client, who maybe just be like another project manager on the client side, and then they have to pass it on to the developer, and everything just adds time. So I think like working with end clients has also its benefits. So I just wanted to share this so that it doesn't look like it's a bad thing always.
No, absolutely not. It has benefits, yes, time-wise, rate-wise, of course, because you can get a higher rate if you don't have an interim company, who is negotiating between you and the client. But I think if I look at it, that it's the price of my comfort. I think to me it's worth it, but I understand that some people have a different approach and they see it in a different way. Uh, it's fine. It's fine. I can absolutely understand those vendors who are looking for the opportunity to work directly to an end client or more, of course. But I tried it, and to me, with my character, with my personality, it didn't work out.
Yeah. I think this is a very good point. That like everybody should just try things on their own and experience. So even though we are like trying to give like some advices and tips here, this is really just something that works for you, and I think this is very important that everybody learns and kind of like tastes what is available and finds out what's working for them and what makes them happy, and just stick to that. So you mentioned rates. That's kind of like a sensitive topic. I don't want to ask like for your rates because that's like kind of like irrelevant, but you also mentioned like your value. So how do you approach negotiating rates? Have you been in a position where the LSP has asked you to lower your rates? How do you go about it? Do you calculate like your margin? Do you look at it from like a long-term perspective? Do you also take the relationship into account? How do you approach the topic of rates?
It changed over time. First, I was happy to have any job coming in,
Of course.
and whatever rate it had, whatever the rate was, I accepted it. And I didn't even pay attention to the rate at first, during my first years, I think, because I was happy to have a solid circle of clients, and I was happy to work for them, and it seemed like a stable, well-established relationship. It was almost like being an employee without the backdraft of being an employee, and it was good. It was very comfortable and easygoing, and I enjoyed it really, really much. And after a time, I realized that I read some blog posts about translation, and it was really interesting to see how different colleagues from different cultures, different backgrounds, think about certain things, about like rates or discount, for instance. And there was a blog, I cannot remember which one, I'm sorry, but it was a really interesting post about giving discount. And the author of the blog post wrote that he never gives discount to anybody, and he had very good arguments, very excellent, strong arguments why. And I started to think about that way because everyone thinks that if you work for a client who is a regular and you give discounts, you get more jobs from them. So it's going to be a long-term cooperation. But at the same time, it means that you have to work more for the same money, and you might lose other clients or other opportunities, uh, and maybe you won't be able to develop, to grow over time because you work for the same client over and over and over again, and it gets boring, and you become a specialist of something. Maybe you won't be, maybe chances are that you won't be able to use this kind of special knowledge and insight if you lose this client, and you have to pick new ones. And second, if you lose this one client you work for, it means that you lose all your income. So that's why I don't like this kind of based on discount long-term relationships. I don't like it. I think it's it's not useful. It's not fruitful, especially not from the vendor's perspective. It's really comfortable for the clients, I think, because they don't have to look for new vendors all the time. they have the one vendor and he works cheaper.
I have a quick question just about this discount, just to make sure that I understand this correctly. Because I understand how discount, especially when we're talking about like long-term relationships, how that works between end clients and LSPs. So they usually have like this minimum amount of work that they need to give to the LSP, and that's when the discount kicks in. So they have like this guaranteed amount of work they're expecting, and if they don't get that amount of work, then like their higher rates are applied. How does it work with freelancers? Do you also have something like that when you talk about discounts? Like the LSP would guarantee you a minimum amount of work per month, or is it just like, okay, you work for us and we promise you that we will keep giving you work, but we will use this discount regardless of the amount of work that we send to you?
Of course, they regardless. Of course.
Okay.
Actually, I don't give discount, and my reason is that my reason for not giving discount is that if I dedicate myself to one client, I might lose my regular ones. And second, I cannot accept as an argument that lots of clients do this, LSPs, I mean, that we gave discount to the end client, so you have to discount to us. I cannot check it. I don't have the chance to check their books, and I cannot call the accountants and ask them, oh, if you have this end client Z, and you are the LSP, and please tell me if you have a special agreement about discounts with this end client Z. They will laugh at best. I mean, or they will call the police, which is understandable, of course. I think relying on something from the LSP's perspective is not fair. I don't, and of course that's when I feel very sorry for the project managers, because it's not their decision, but they are the ones who have to communicate it.
Yeah, they're the messengers,
Yeah.
that get slain.
And I feel so sorry for them. Of course, I'm angry at them because they are the ones doing me. I don't necessarily,
Which is natural, yeah.
but it doesn't mean that I act like that, because I'm an experienced translator and an experienced vendor, and I understand the process behind. So I won't shout. I won't be necessarily angry unless the communication, the tone is inappropriate. Otherwise, I'm just saying no. I say no, I don't give discounts. I'm sorry. If you want to work with me under this condition, please feel free to do so. Otherwise, we won't be able to cooperate. And interestingly, I don't think many people do this, because 90% of the time the client accepts that I don't give discount.
You mean the end client or the LSP?
The LSP.
The LSP.
The LSP, yes. As I don't work for end clients now, so when I say client, I mean LSP. I'm sorry, I will pay attention to it, okay? I don't know why. I mean, maybe they just want to keep a good vendor, or giving 5%, 10% from my rate is not as important, because to be honest, rates depend on the market, not on the vendor or not on the client. If you are from a not so rich country, and your market is small, your rates will be much significantly lower than a vendor who is coming from a rich and big market.
Yeah, but like market, like, but it also depends on like what is the competition for that language pair, right? Because like if I don't have any Hungarian translators, and I really need to like promote my new product or service in Hungary, if I don't find anyone suitable, then you might charge me more than I don't know, people might charge me in Germany or France because I have a lot more options, right? So that's also like, it's kind of like a supply and demand, right? It's like the basics of economics. But of course, you
If
as a
if you are aware of this, yes. Otherwise, you won't charge more.
yes, yes,
At
yes,
least
yes.
I
That's
don't.
what I was just going to say, because like you as a freelancer don't know if I'm actually struggling to find someone good, so you don't know that you have the opportunity to charge me more, and I would still take it because I have no other option. But yeah, I think we were stuck a little bit on the discounts, but just like let's talk about general like your rates. Like, do you have like a standard rates that you apply for everyone, or how do you differentiate between like, let's say, new client? I'm not sure if you're like taking new clients at this point. What if you had a new client? Do you start a negotiation by saying like, these are my rates, or do you let them approach you like, what would you suggest you want to pay me? And maybe also give an example with existing clients, because you said like you have these long-term relationships. I'm wondering whether your rates have changed over time, and if they changed, did they increase or did they go down?
You have very, very complex questions.
Yeah, I wanted to.
Okay.
Yes, because like, when I was preparing for this, I was like reading Tim Ferriss. You know Tim Ferriss?
No, but go
Okay, so
on.
he's like this. He has like one of the most successful podcasts, and I know him because he wrote a book, 4 Hour Work Week, and he's generally like this kind of like efficiency guy, and he tests like a lot of things. So I was going through like he made like a blog post about interviews, and he said like that he wanted to differentiate his podcast to be very practical, and I also want to do the same thing, so that's why I'm asking about these details, because like all your answers could help someone who's just starting out, or who's listening, or who's more experienced. So I want to know how you approach these rates, because I'm pretty sure that's one very important topic for everyone, for all the freelancers, like how they set their rates. And especially since you were talking about like the value of yourself, that like like that you are like a professional, you are a very good translator, your value. So I want to know how you reflect this in your rates, and how you go about a negotiation of the rates.
Knowing my value means that I don't give discount. It's something I, I cannot be flexible with this, because my LSPs and my project managers are quite demanding. So I feel that if I let it happen once, it will happen all the time. But it's just me. It's just me. I don't say it's necessarily true. It's just my fear that it might happen. Uh, and knowing my value also means that I try to renegotiate my rates time after time. Uh, the thing is that whenever I chose uh, an LSP to work with, or they picked me simply, they had ready to go rates, and I tried to negotiate these rates right at the beginning, because I found them very low and very uh, previous decade rates, and sometimes it worked out, sometimes it didn't. But I tried to renegotiate my rates because life is getting more and more expensive, and if you have the same rates, you won't be able to allow yourself certain things after a while. You are I was never offered a higher rate due to time or because we had a 5-year anniversary in our cooperation, so we will increase your rates for this reason. No, it never happened to me, and I just simply try to negotiate all the time. For instance, there are times when you are offered to perform a quick job and an expedited job, express job, and then they offer you a standard rate, and I tell them, no, thank you, I cannot accept it, because it means that I will be late, running late with anything else. Anything else I already accepted and promised, and so I have to squeeze this job into my already full schedule, or into my not so tight schedule, but I want to have a lazy day.
Mm-hmm.
and it means that my extra effort is for my time and not for not for the job, or because it's big or small. It doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is that you need it quite right away. So you have to offer me more than a standard rate, and it depends how much I ask for, and that's the point when when you will understand if the job is really urgent or not.
Oh yeah.
If the job is urgent, they will pay you a higher rate. If the job is not so urgent, they will try to look for somebody else.
Yeah, that's a good point.
There's, it's about psychology. You have to learn people. You have to observe how they behave, how they react. What can you allow yourself? What kind of tone you have to use, or what can you use? How to speak, when to be friendly, and when to be flexible, and when to be very, very firm. And it comes with experience. There is no recipe, but you will know that you screwed something up. Taylor Taylor is the best tutor, I think, and you don't have to be ashamed of yourself, especially if you are a beginner. I mean, a newcomer, and you just have to test the client, and you have to push yourself, a bit, not much, just to get the picture of yourself. Because if you start a new profession and you have a different background, or you have already worked for 20 years in different industries, still doesn't mean that you actually know yourself. It's a different situation. It's a different profession. It's a quickly changing environment, and you just have to observe yourself, know yourself, and if you know yourself, you will know your clients, the LSPs, the project managers, and that's when you can build strong relationships with them, I think.